Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today I'm finally, like 2 years later, going to be doing a review for We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Faizal. Now you might be wondering, what on earth do you mean, like 2 years ago? But this book originally came out in 2019. It was one of my most anticipated releases of the whole year. And when I first read it, I was incredibly disappointed with it. And I always meant to come back to it and see if my thoughts have changed, to do a review. And here we stand, like 2 years later. We Hunt the Flame is the first book in a young adult fantasy duology. It follows two main perspective characters, the first one being Zephyra. During the day, she gallivants into a magical, dangerous forest as the hunter to basically provide for her people, but if anyone discovers her secret, her life is essentially null and void, at risk, done. That was eloquent. Moving on. And then we follow the Crown Prince Nasir, who is an assassin. He basically does the bidding of his corrupted father and is miserable with his life and his choices, but feels like he has no other way. And the two of them are set out and put on a quest to rescue a magical object to basically bring peace unto the land. Trigger warnings include death of a parent, murder/death, and parental abuse and torture. Just remembered that now. And like I mentioned, I originally read this in 2019, but there were a couple of circumstances that were on my part that I think definitely hindered my original enjoyment of the story. I was rushing to get through it because I was going on like a mini trip and I didn't want to lug this thing around with me. And I never gave it the time to breathe and like for me to take it really in. And I just found myself disappointed throughout the story. And I actually went back and watched my wrap up. I reread it finally because of a prompt that I got in my new like little TBR game that I'm doing to give a book a second chance, and I finally did it. Originally I tried the audiobook because it was available on my library and I was like, great, I don't have to physically read this again. Mistake. If you're going to pick up this story, bar none, do not read the audiobook. It features two British narrators, even though this book is set in an ancient Arabian inspired world with frequent uses of Arabic words, and it just doesn't work for me. Like, shame on the publisher for doing that. That was so irresponsible, and it's not the author's fault whatsoever. But if you can, please pick up the print book. Just to get down to it, I enjoyed this story significantly more than I did the first time, although I do have some major issues with it, and I want to finally review this story. I think this was the longest intro I've ever had in my entire life, and I'm just prolonging the inevitable. Let's finally get into the review. In regards to the world building, I appreciated it more this go around. Definitely, I remember being disappointed with the world building. There are some really cool concepts and stuff in regards to the world. I really like the settings, the various settings we experience. We have a wintry forest and like snow everywhere for one part, and then we move into a desert setting, and I like the way that Hafsah built this world. I enjoyed the political stuff as well, how there is like a ruling king, but then also lesser peoples and like the corruption that's kind of running through it. That stuff I really enjoyed. Now in terms of the magic, there was a bit too many, I think, stuff that Hafsah wanted to put in here, and it kind of suffers a little bit. I just found it a little ironic because magic is supposed to be dead in this story, and the characters are going on a journey to restore magic, and yet there are still magical beings. One of our main characters has magic, another character has another type of magic, and it's like magic is supposed to be dead, and yeah, here we are. I also really enjoyed our characters more in this story, appreciated their arcs and the way they grew a lot more in here, because although they are a bit too hot and cold for my liking, like the back and forth gives you whiplash occasionally, the overall arcing bit I did enjoy more, and they are definitely not the same people that they were on the start of their journey. I also could have used a little bit more of the enemies in terms of the enemies to lover stuff. I think we see this a lot in young adult, maybe because a lot of young adult stories used to be trilogies and now they're like forced to duology, so things have to progress quicker, but I could have used a lot more enemies, and her not being so gung-ho on him so early on. She does like go back and forth on that a lot, but she should have just spent more time hating him for very clear reasons. I did enjoy the larger group dynamics. We have a sort of found family that isn't developed in here, but I'm going to stick a pin in that for now because I have to discuss it after. But overall, I did enjoy the group dynamics. And near the end of the story, though, things did get a little bit muddied in terms of the characters and all the motivations in regards to them. There is reveal upon reveal upon reveal at the end of the story, and everything just is too muddled, too much, especially with character motivations. It's a lot. Now, the plot is a good portion of where I struggled throughout the book. This is a classic hero's journey quest story, and I'm not mad at it for having classic tropes and stuff, but the middle portion of the book suffers. Oh, is it slow. The beginning, really interesting. I like the setup. I liked the ending, although the ending was very rushed. I like what it sets up for the sequels. The middle was very repetitive. Could get a bit tedious and boring at times, and it's so weird because this book is nearly 500 pages and the middle section could have had more developmental stuff as opposed to the back and forth and characters just like refusing to communicate. There's information that characters require significantly early on, and every time our main character Zephyr is like, tell me now, they're like, no, when we get to this place. And it's gets extended and it's irritating as a reader. I did say that I liked what the ending sets up, and that is true, but I do think the ending is a hot mess. There's just way too much stuff revealed. Way too much stuff revealed. I listed stuff down, and I can't say them now because of obvious spoilers, but there are at least 6 things revealed in the last maybe 50 pages to create a ginormous cliffhanger, or I should say multiple cliffhangers. Like, that needed, I think, a bit of editing and fixing. And the writing was my biggest struggle overall with this story. And it's so frustrating because in terms of just general prose, I did like Hafsah's writing. I like the way her descriptions of like the scenery and like the food and everything going on. But when it came to dialogue, that's where your girl started to struggle. Something that was so frustrating to me was that you could see where Hafsah wanted the group dynamics to go, but the second the group is introduced, banter of all types has been like put together, when essentially every single individual in this group wants to kill one another for various reasons and should be entirely enemies, and it just doesn't fit for where the group is at the time. I didn't love the dialogue, and at times during action scenes, I didn't think enough was described to actually follow what was going on. Things got a bit muddied, and I think we needed a bit more description. And the thing that drove me nuts too was that there are some individual scenes in this story that like stand out so well, but in the larger context of the story, it didn't entirely make sense, and that was a bummer because there are some scenes that I will remember. Overall, I have genuinely a lot more positive feelings about this story, which makes me happy because I was so excited for this story in 2019. It was literally my second most anticipated release of the whole year behind the Dragon Republic, so like I was excited for it. I did end up giving this 3 stars, which 2 to 3 stars doesn't seem like a huge leap, but I do have some construction issues with the overall narrative, and a 3-star rating is still a good rating from me. So I'm happy with it. I'm looking forward to continuing on with the sequel. If I'm correct, I think the sequel actually is just been released. And I have it on hold from my library. So when it gets in, I will happily finish out the series. I'm invested in the characters and their stories, and I think a lot of my overall thoughts do hinge on the finale, and I hope it's a home run, knocked out of the park. I I really hope I enjoy it. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of We Hunt the Flame. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you again very soon. Bye!